Hi everyone, thanks for coming to see the Cambium Networks CAF Funding webinar. If you have any questions, please type them into the text box on the right, and we'll either answer them as we go along or maybe at the end. And without further ado, here is Troy Conley to give you the first part of your presentation.
Thank you very much, Colin, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. We think we have a pretty exciting agenda to talk about. As you know, the CAF reverse, the upcoming CAF reverse auction gives local service providers an opportunity to gain subscribers in census blocks supported by funding from the federal government. We have a full agenda today that I will show you as soon as I can figure out how to increment this slide. We believe what we've tried to do today is we've put together an educational agenda to talk you through what the CAF process is, how to work through the process, identifying vertical assets in your territory for those of you that aren't experienced with wireless. And we've seen in the past that several bidders, at least in the rural broadband experiment, weren't wireless, didn't have a lot of wireless experience. So identifying vertical assets is something very important that we'll talk about. We've got a good lineup of speakers. We'll start it out with an overview. We'll talk about vertical assets, and then, of course, we'll talk about fixed wireless products. As the organizer of the webinar, we believe that fixed wireless has the technical capabilities and the cost effectiveness to help you craft a winning bid for the upcoming CAF reverse auction. And we know that because we've seen that in past experiences like in the rural broadband experiment. So we've got a lot of slides. We've got a lot of slides. So we're going to talk kind of fast on this. So we're going to go ahead and move along. Once again, like Colin said, if you have any questions, please type them in the box as we go along, and we'll try to answer them as we go. Before we get kicked off, I want to go over a little bit of the history and the timeline of what the Connect America Fund is. As you all probably know, in November 2011, the FCC released a detail of the transition from the USF to the broadband-oriented Connect America Fund. CAF Phase 1 was offered in November of 2011. Bandwidth requirements at 4.4 meg down, 1 meg up were the requirements at the time. Most importantly, or one of the most important things, is 100 milliseconds of latency, because the FCC has mandated that any company providing broadband has to also be able to provide voice over this type of mechanism. So therefore, the 100 milliseconds is really important. They released $300 million. The price cap carriers only accepted $115 million of that $300 million. And they continued to balk moving forward. There were a lot of petitions that they filed. They continued to balk going forward at a lot of the provisions of the CAF Phase 1. The FCC, frustrated with the acceptance of the price cap companies, initiated the rural broadband experiment in July of 2011. We believe that probably formed the basis of how this reverse auction is going to take place, and Ted will talk about this. But the bottom line was the FCC, frustrated by the continuing obstinance, if you will, the price cap carrier, said if we can't get them to provide broadband, we'll find somebody who can. So they came up with a $100 million budget for the rural broadband experiment. They received 600 project bid for 76,000 census blocks. They received bids by $800 million over what was offered in the rural broadband experiment. They chose around 40, and the initial winners were 14 wireless ISPs, 7 local telephone companies, 4 power companies, and 2 cable companies. So it showed them that if they continued to get a lot of resistance from the price cap companies, then there were other people that were lined up that would provide broadband service to these areas. So through the experience that they had, the positive experience they had in the rural broadband experiment, they rolled out CAF Phase 2, where they basically told the price cap companies, look, we have people lined up to serve these people, and if you continue to refuse to serve them, then we will find someone who will. So they released in Phase 2 $1.7 billion. The price cap companies, AT&T and CenturyLink and Frontier and the others lined up, and they accepted $1.5 billion of that. They had the right to refuse certain census blocks that they didn't want to serve, so they chose the ones that they wanted to, and they left the others open. Those are the ones that will be available for the reverse auction whenever it comes. It's important to note that with CAF Phase 2, and actually it was started with rural broadband experiment, that the required speeds were 10-1, and the 100 milliseconds of latency stayed in place. Now, there's a lot of talk about 25.3, and we think they'll eventually go to that, and I think Ted will talk a little bit about that as well. But in the Phase 2 of the CAF that the price cap carriers took, it was 10-1. So we're here today to talk about the CAF Phase 2 reverse auction. And basically what that is it takes the census blocks that the price cap carriers refuse to serve and will put them in reverse auction for local service providers that can provide the minimum speeds and the minimum technical requirements that's laid out in the further notice of proposed rulemaking. Originally, it was slated at about $175 million annually. That's what's $1.75 billion over a 10-year period, because this is a 10-year award. It's since gone up, and Ted will talk about that. And originally there was only 20 states, but now there are census blocks available in all 50 states. So with that, and once again, I want to highlight that it is a reverse auction. So when these bids go in, the FCC is going to be looking at who's serving what census blocks, what kind of speeds and technical requirements that they can meet, and what's the price that they're submitting on their bid, because the lowest price that meets the technical requirements will win those census blocks. So with that, I am now going to turn this over to Ted Osborne, who will take you through the CAF overview and the process for bidding. Ted, you the man.
Thank you, Troy. I appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to be with you today. I think you stated it quite well in terms of teeing up where we are with the Connect America Fund Phase 2 auction that will be very much in play for the next year. And just want to ask Troy, I've revised the screen. Has everybody seen that okay? All right, assuming I assume that the screen is shown.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you today. I thank Troy and the Cambium team for hosting today's event, and I thank you for attending this briefing on the Connect America Fund. As Troy actually did mention, you now know that funding is available in actually nearly all U.S. states, and I think the Connect America Fund is very serious business. It should not be taken lightly. The program, I believe, is going to change rural broadband forever. This Phase 2 auction is looking to fund up to 1.5 million locations, rural locations, with an annual budget of $215 million per year for each of 10 years. The subsidy will be provided as a grant to the lowest cost bidder per the rules that we will discuss today. Commentary: local operators, I believe, with existing infrastructure near where subsidy is available, will have the advantage if the bidder is qualified and highly prepared. The Connect America Fund, you hear referred to as CAF. Our agenda today has a simple purpose: to provide you with an education on the CAF program so that you may be better prepared to determine your level of interest as a prospective bidder in this upcoming auction. We're going to organize our topic to first provide some background history on CAF. Then we will break down the elements of the auction, where and how much subsidy could be available, the eligibility requirements, rules, and bid qualifications. My personal goal is to provide you with insight to help you to determine if CAF is a good fit for your business. Then we'll bring it back together to discuss how to proceed. A little background on myself. I am a former WISP founder and operator. I researched
Ted, did you increment the slide?
I did. We should be seeing the presenter background.
Okay, I still see the first one. There we go. Let's see. It looks like I'm going to have to increment your slide, so just let me know when.
Okay. Then let's go to slide 3, please.
Okay.
As I was indicating, my background is that I founded and operated a WISP dating back to 2003. I began to use the precursor of the Cambium product line dating back to that point in time, and we were exclusively on the Motorola Canopy platform during the 5 years that I owned and operated the business. In 2008, we merged that business into Jab Wireless, otherwise known as Rise Broadband. And since that time, I have been under the business of WISP Partners to advise on rural broadband development. And I did participate in the reverse auction, in the rural broadband experiment in 2014 as the project manager, where we won bids for 10 locations in 5 states for just under $17 million. And today I provide strategy and corporate development advisory services around rural broadband. Next slide, please. Slide 4.
Yeah, I'm there. Oh,
thank you.
Hang on. Your 4th slide is actually slide 8. Okay, go ahead.
All right, we're looking now at the slide of the United States depicting green areas that were eligible for funding for the Phase 2 proceeding. And due to the statutory requirements that was determined to be the obligation under the FCC, the price cap carriers, or the incumbents, or the large telcos, as you see here, were provided the first bite at the apple that Troy had earlier mentioned. This was in August of 2015 that these price cap carriers made their determination as to how much of the subsidy they would accept and how much of an obligation they would make. These large telcos either had to elect or decline their statewide commitment for all territories within a state. So as a result, we see in the next slide that the price caps accepted the offer very aggressively. In fact, it surprised us to a large extent that they did take $1.5 billion a year off the table. The required performance standards, as Troy indicated, do require a 10-1 level service to be built out over 6 years. And that requirement to serve voice and other interactive applications that are important to all users today had a requirement of 100 milliseconds round-trip latency and at least 100 gig of data usage per month. There were no technology restrictions at all. The remaining areas left behind by the telcos are to be funded through this upcoming auction. In the next slide, we see the remaining subsidy of $175 billion a year. This is something that has been out there for some time now, about a year, so you've likely seen this. Here is where we see, for example, that AT&T decided to leave Missouri, Nevada, and Oklahoma aside and not make the statewide commitment. And then another example, Verizon, which operates most predominantly in the eastern seaboard states, also declined to participate. In the next slide, we put some numbers behind the states that are available in those 20 states that Troy had mentioned. However, what is news to a lot of folks, I'm sure today on the call, is that the FCC has added an additional $40 million in annual subsidy, which includes all 48 contiguous states and Hawaii. In the next slide, 8, we see where we will break down now the elements of the auction. And where the subsidy is available, we'll discuss the eligibility, rules and bid qualifications, and how to proceed. You may ask when, I get this a lot, you may ask when we can anticipate entering the auction process. It would appear that the bid window will open sometime next year. It could be early, it could be late part of 2017. I will warn you, however, that now is the time to prepare, as the process is complex and the importance of your decisions are very important to you, very real to you, I should say. So we will go now and look at, please. We'll now look at the auction itself and see in this slide, depicted in gold, the areas eligible for funding at the census blocks that are shown here on the map. What is added is 29 additional states. So up until this change, we anticipated that there would be no eligible funding for states such as Texas and California, Oregon, Washington, the entire upper Midwest, and much of the Southeast. The changes, I think, are very significant. Some of you may have seen the CAM 43 file that the FCC published in August, just last month, where it showed 317,000 rows of census block data, which had within the reserve amounts and locations in each state. Here is a one-page summary of the model, where it shows the reserve amount and locations per state. And I wanted to make a comment about what we mean by reserve amount. The reserve amount is the highest amount of money that any one bidder can bid. And so it is the reserve price that the auction will not go above. Through the competitive bidding cycle, there will be some fraction of those amounts of money bid by various players. And I anticipate there will be overlap of various players in making bids in specific areas. Altogether, with the budget of $215 million annually and the nearly $1 billion of total reserve price, we have a coverage ratio of budget to reserve of about 22%. So that's an indication of where of what might result throughout this process. Now, in a perfect and efficient auction, everyone would bid distinct markets at exactly 22% of the reserve price, and the FCC will have a great win. It's not going to happen that way, as I'm sure you can imagine. As we go to the next slide, we now visualize these census blocks in this example in the state of Oklahoma, whereby these blue areas show the census blocks throughout the state, And all these maps have been created now, whereby one can look and see where the auction money might be available. We're going to go in and drill down on that later in the presentation, so that you get a sense for what information is provided to you during the auction. I get asked quite a bit, how is this auction different from the rural broadband experiment? Serving as the project manager for the last experiment, I immersed myself in this to a large extent, and there were rules that were very onerous for the small rural providers that are out there in rural America. And there's been a considerable amount of advocacy in lockstep, for the most part, between the WISPA Trade Association, the American Cable Association, and the Rural Telecommunications Association, NTCA, I think it is, whereby there's been a proceeding through the FCC where advocacy is asked for the rules to be altered in a manner where we can have greater participation in the auction that we failed to achieve in the experiment. So at a very high level, and this is not intended to be a comprehensive list, let's review the key elements. And we know that there's considerably more money available over the 10-year period. We may recall that in the experiment, 3 years of audited financials were required. And typically a small private business has little requirement for an audit. However, the FCC does require some protection in knowing that the business is a qualified and going concern. As a result, they did determine relative to this auction that 1 year of audited financials are required, and to the extent that you do not have that going into the bid, should you be named a provisional winner, you are provided a 6-month window to provide those audited financials to the FCC. Let's discuss the letter of credit that is required in the auction as well. The letter of credit is the protection mechanism for the FCC to be good stewards of public monies, whereby this is a grant. The FCC would like a recourse to draw back the amounts that have been provided as subsidy for the build of your network should you fail to meet the performance requirements that we will discuss just in a moment. The letter of credit requirement is a dollar-for-dollar requirement. And in the experiment, it lasted for all the monies provided for the entire 10-year period. And you should be, you should know that these monies carry a cost for having the bank support that available line for you. As far as drawing on that letter of credit, the rules state that should you fail to meet performance standards in the annual reporting periods, you will be provided a period of time to cure. I believe it's 6 months. And to the extent that you cure the deficiency, you will not have any risk of that letter of credit being taken. And when it comes to this, we looked at the entire 10 years and asked, can we get a reduction of that amount as the network is built and certified? And the answer is yes. To the extent that you build the network over a course of time, you can reduce the letter of credit to a large extent as you move along. So this is not as onerous as it was in the experiment. Relative to the kinds of banks that would be eligible to provide that letter of credit, we find that whereas in the experiment it was 100 of the largest banks in the United States, and typically a local rural provider does not work with Chase or Bank of America. Rather, they tend to work with maybe co-bank or maybe a local bank that is in your area. So the FCC determined that to the extent that the bank is rated by an independent rating agency named Weiss with a rating of B- or better, which includes about 3,600 U.S. banks, then that bank is therefore qualified to support you with a letter of credit. Relative to the rules, bid performance and tiers, we have for the auction 4 technology-neutral service standards with bidder flexibility to designate either high or low latency for each. And by technology neutral, the FCC is saying that a bidder can design wireless networks, both licensed and license-free. A minimum performance tier requires bidders to commit to 10 megabit downlink and 1 megabit uplink. Actually, yes, that's correct, the minimum. The baseline, which is where the FCC would prefer to go as they try to move upwards toward rural households having the same level of service as those in urban areas, have moved to 25/3 megabits per second, each with a 150 gig data cap usage allowance. The above baseline tier of 100/20 was established with an unlimited usage allowance, and gigabit with 500 megabit upstream commitment is also unlimited data usage. Note, and this is important, that when the FCC states a performance tier of 25/3, for example, that means sustained rate during peak usage periods. The build-out completion dates are 40% at the end of year 3, 60 for 4, until you get to the end of the 6th year where you're required to build out 100%. How to proceed? So this, I'm going to tell you, is the methodology that I used in preparing for the bids during the experiment. I think first it's very important that you read the rules. Go to fcc.org, search for the Connect America Fund proceeding, and find the report and order that's dated May 26th of this year. Read it. It's very complex and difficult to comprehend. Seek advice if you feel that you need it to understand your eligibility. Then, if you believe you want to pursue the opportunity, refine your areas of interest, create mapping polygons to capture the underlying metadata, and assess what your actual addressable market might be for that area. Determine what network you're going to build around the tiers. Work with your supply chain to qualify spectrum availability. Infrastructure capacities and costs for broadband and voice need to be determined, and you need to start to establish the banking commitment to prepare the standby letters of credit. Identify support professionals, such as professional engineers that are required to stamp the network design and project plan. And you must also be an eligible telecommunications carrier, so making applications may be necessary with the state PUC. From there, it's important to create a business model that deeply understands all costs relative to timelines, penetration, and ARPU assumptions, and project the cash flow results. At that point in time, you will know where you can comfortably bid and be happy that you will be able to achieve the responsibilities that the FCC will hold you to. In wrapping up, I will show you here is another state map, state of California. It has $72 million in annual reserve, and it's about 88,000 locations that are available in California. As we drill down to just the upper 1/3 of the state, we can look at an individual census block to discover that in this particular case, right on the Nevada border, there are 20 locations. with a reserve price of $35,000 per year. I will tell you there's a great deal of variability in terms of the cost model relative to how much is provided per location. And in closing, I will tell you to bear in mind that the FCC has not made a final determination, but the areas that one can bid will not be as granular as a census block as it was in the experiment. Rather, it will be census block groups or possibly census tracts. I'm guessing the former. And in closing, I will tell you that I wish you all the very best in your deliberations and decision-making around CAF. I think it's very important, and as Troy has asked me to let you know that I should put in a shameless plug for any support that you might need where I may be of value to you. WISP Partners is an assembly of experts in this area, and we've been successful at raising public and private capital for growth. Our passion is rural broadband, and I'd be happy to take questions after today's conference. With that, I'll turn it back over to Troy, and again, thank you all very much.
I think the best thing to do now that you have control is just to turn it over to Jeffrey.
Okay. All right, I'm happy to do that.
Jeff, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Let me.
We apologize for the logistical challenges. This is our first time doing this with multiple presenters, so we're learning as we go.
I typically am able to. Oh, here we go. It's different on. I understand. It's different for this particular version of GoToMeeting. So one moment, please.
Well, as you're working through it, Jeffrey, we have your first tower, your first slide up says American Tower, Connect America.
Yeah. Yep. And I'll start there. And maybe the presenter so I show my screen. All right, where are we at here? Now, showing the screen. All right, I no longer see the screen, so I don't know if I now have control. If I don't, if someone else does, feel free to. I can share with you when to turn the slides.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and I'll start by, well, first of all, thanks for your time. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time, so I'll kind of run through this as quickly as possible. But obviously there's a lot of information in these slides, so if folks have questions, you can refer to it, and then obviously reach out to me directly. I've been with American Tower for over 15 years now in different sales capacities. I now oversee internet service providers nationally. And over the last couple of months, American Tower and Cambium have really decided or made a decision to partner into this realm of the opportunity of assisting folks and expanding and building new networks. And how that has come about is really that American Tower over the last couple of years has realized the growth of our non-national customers. So we've basically grown a segment business for us, which has national sales folks overseeing what we call segment customers, like utilities and government and internet service providers, oil and gas, machine to machine. And with that, we just realized that those folks are growing, they need support, and we needed to craft an offering specifically to them. So today what I'm going to talk about is really who we are, how we support our customers, the available systems and tools that we have, and then some of the financial offerings to actually co-locate on our assets. So, there's an understanding of there's the areas that need to be covered. Cambium obviously has a great piece of equipment that can offer that coverage solution. And where we come to play is we own the assets in the areas that you can install your equipment on to actually propagate the signal. So the next slide is, which I can't see, but it's our wireless communication site. That's my second slide. And then we can actually
I'm at your third slide right now that talks about towers and rooftops.
Great. All right. And this is really just a quick snapshot to show everyone who American Tower is. I started 15 years ago, and we just had a small number of towers. Through the years, we've acquired assets and grown and built our own. So at this point, for the most part, who I interact with internet service providers are typically on the 40,000 towers and the 15,000 rooftops. But we also have some sites that share generators, and we also are the largest DAS provider in the U.S. at 1,300 assets and locations. But that's just really a snapshot of our asset base. We can go into the next slide, which is really is our 4WISP program, which we've really created, and I oversee WISP, but it can be identified for anyone who's trying to deploy CAF funds. So we'll roll to the next page, which talks about the co-location. And if we're there, really the lines are talking about leasing opportunities. And what we really wanted to do on this slide is describe to everyone what our assets look like and how they play into the CAF funds. So of our 60,000 assets, 22,000 of our towers are outside of the top 100 VTAs, where typically the CAF funds are being deployed. And 79% of our non-urban towers are 150 foot in height. Obviously, offering higher RAD centers gives you larger areas to propagate, more customers, more revenue opportunities. So sometimes we've had some folks actually come to us. They might be on a grain silo or something other at a lower height. They can get on our tower, offer a higher coverage area, and secure additional revenues. The next page starts to talk about who we are from an RF consulting and GIS analysis. And what this really speaks to, and obviously we're not out designing networks, but for our customers, what we can do is assist in their network development. So we have in-house engineers that can assist with design and analysis of potential networks. And obviously that goes from anywhere of just ground up new builds to optimization and backhaul. And then we also have a GIS team that can provide mapping analysis, and we'll show you one of those maps we did a quick snapshot on in a couple slides. But the way we look at things is different, and we've evolved in the industry to understand when we look at sites that we want to look at it the same way that our customers do. So we look at the population counts within 3 miles, how many households are in there, what the opportunity for revenue is there. So we're just making an educated decision about, hey, this is a good location to deploy services. There's enough households underneath of it that are going to need service. Our rent would be an acceptable rate. And so we have a much better understanding of that today than we have in the past. And we can deliver those files in any type of form you want, whether Excel, Google Earth, and any other type of mapping softwares. The next page is dedicated support. And this speaks to some changes that we've really just done over the last year, which is created a sales team that specifically sells to the segments. What happened in the past was there was a lot of attention typically to the big four. They're obviously the ones that run the majority of our business, but we realize this segment business is growing continuously, and as a response to that, we've hired folks in each of our markets that strictly focuses on our segment customers. We have a specific project manager who just interacts with WISP. So as your applications go into our system, there's a single point of contact once they go into our system until basically your lease is completed and you're into construction. Our engineering team is there to support, whether from a design perspective or an actual structural perspective, because some jurisdictions require that. And then probably the most important folks to a lot of this build is our field operations technicians. So we've got folks in the local market that just maintain and operate the sites. So when it comes time to do a feasibility walk or determine if the site can actually work for you, they're local in the market. They understand what kind of power is there, what kind of telco is there, where you can go onto the tower, and they actually take a face-to-face meeting on site. With all of those pieces in place, it just makes it an easier process for folks who, one, haven't done business with us in the past to understand our business, and then folks that have done business with us, because today we do business with roughly 350 different WISPs. So the business is growing and the opportunities are there to partner. The next slide, which is on-air access, which is really one of our tools, and I'll speak to this, but if you go onto our webpage and just go into on-air access, it just asks for a username and sets up a password. and it'll give you access to this. You don't have to be an existing customer. But this is a tool that we've created to, one, allow you to find sites, and I'll show you a quick snapshot of that. But then it's also to where you apply, where you track your systems, where everything is delivered to you over the air, so that you've got 24/7 access into your projects. The next page, it talks about this one, which I think is beneficial because, as Ted talked about, there are areas that you might be specifically looking for to identify opportunities and markets you'd like to build. And this is where we go into our site locator. You can actually find sites, and there's a couple boxes here that are highlighted because you can drill down into here by address or by county or by state or by city, and then you can actually download this into, if you identify sites, you can download those sites into your databases. You can lay base maps over it, so you can get population data in there. You can actually get it to a Google Earth format where you're basically looking at an Earth shot. So it's a very useful tool, very interactive. You can save things within it and identify assets so you can easily come back and see them. And the next page is the Connect America Phase 2 Auction Oklahoma map. So what our GIS folks did was just pick the state by, nothing other than, hey, it's in the middle of the country. So we picked Oklahoma, and what we did is we took those identified areas that CAF funds are likely available and laid our assets over top of them. So you can see by this map that if you wanted specifically to look at this and you reached out to American Tower to say, hey, what is California, or what does specific counties look like, we can actually produce those maps for you. And then from there, obviously, we could partner with Cambium and what does the opportunity for coverage look like, and so forth, and easily design a system that can accommodate the CAF funds to secure them for you. Into the next page, which is our network specifications and pricing considerations. And we can just go right into the next page, which is the site specifications. And what I wanted to do here is to talk about this. And over the years, we've really dove into how our customers run their business and to try and better understand how we can price things, how we can create and craft a business model for them. But what we also like to share that's important is how we look at things, so that when you approach us or another tower company, these are the things that that we're typically going to be looking for to establish a price point for a co-location. And one is a preferred equipment height. There's a number of rad centers, so obviously that's a center line where you install your equipment. We preferably like to have antennas and dishes at the same rad center. Obviously it's just vertical real estate to us, so the less space you utilize on the tower, the less your rent would be. The number of antennas that you install, typically there's a rad center, so if your equipment is installed there, we've created WISP pricing models, so there are some that allow for 3 or 6 or 9 antennas, so you'll want to be specific about that. Is it an Omni, is it a panel, are there remote radio heads installed on the antenna that click into the back, is it a separate piece of equipment, and then obviously the microwave dishes. So these are all things that we're looking at. And finally, it's just the ground space as well. So do you need to do a cabinet on the ground? Are you going to put in a small shelter? Can you go inside? Potentially American Tower might own a shelter on site. Maybe you can go inside of our shelter. But those are the big 3 things that we look for when we're looking to establish price. We can go into the next page, which is, we make getting on air affordable and predictable. So these are some of our financial offerings. And so we can go into the next, which discusses monthly lease rate options. And I'm assuming we're there. And I won't go into exact specifics on these, but what I want to have folks understand is that we work with a lot of different businesses out in different markets. And really what we do is we've established a couple pricing scenarios that have worked, but truly we craft a pricing model for what your business needs. Obviously it has to be a win for both companies, but we start here with rates which might allow for growth. But I think that the evolution, which has been great for me to see over the last couple of years in this role, has really been the evolution of the discussion we're having. I like to say that we're having more carrier-style conversations about what the future looks like. Like, let's think about future growth. Let's look at capacity. Let's look at where you want to be in 3 years, so that we can capture that. Like, the goal is not to have you guys install day one. 6 months later, you need to install more equipment because of capacity. We need to discuss rate again. So we can capture everything in the beginning. So it's a simple, easy growth process for our customers. We'd prefer to do that. So that's why I say we're starting to have much more carrier-style conversations, and I think the tools and systems that our customers have today are great, and it's definitely evolving. So it's making it a much easier process for us to craft offerings to our customers. And then I'll end it with the next slide, which is just my contact information. So as I said, I oversee our internet service provider business. If potentially you interact with someone who's a different contact in our segment business, I'll obviously share that with them as well. But we're truly here to grow the business, to grow the opportunities, and we think this is a great partnership, one, with Cambium, and two, the opportunity to assist folks in the local market to build their business. And that's it for me, Troy.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm unclear as to whether everybody is seeing the slide right now. So I'm going to go back to this. I think I've taken control again. If we had some logistical issues, I apologize. I'm going to go up to, we're running short on time, so I'm going to make this relatively quick because I want to be respectful of your time. There are multiple segments in building a network, as you all know. Long haul, if you have facilities adjacent to a census block that you want to get into, obviously you can build fiber out there. Another way to reach it is through long haul microwave. There are some customers that utilize DSLAMs, and we'll build this out by utilizing their DSLAMs. We have a product that reaches the middle mile, and of course what we specialize in as much as anything else is last mile access through our point-to-multipoint systems. We have point-to-multipoint, we have point-to-point, we have licensed, and we have unlicensed, and we also have a product that pulls it all together that we call, that's a wireless manager that we call CN Maestro. Our long-haul PTP-820 is a multi-gigabit microwave radio system with high spectral efficiency. I won't go through all the details because we're running short on time, but I'll be happy to talk to you about all of this if you'll reach out to me. We have 3 different flavors. Once again, the reverse auction is just that. It's a reverse auction. Least cost with meeting the technical requirements will win the day for you. So we have 3 different flavors of the 820, the 820S, the small, the 820C, a multi-core radio that provides the 1.5 plus with a gigabit speeds throughout the radio. These have different cost profiles. You may not necessarily need the double core radio for an area that you want to reach. You want to do just a single core 1 gig radio. We can price those out for you to match what it is that you want to do to keep your pricing low. 2048 QAM, 1 gig in a single box. It's almost 2 gig with the 820C. Highly reliable, supports multiple channel sizes. Very, very advanced radio. This talks a little bit about the 820C. I'm going through this pretty quick. You can see that it'll support 1.0. It'll play 1+0, 2+0. It'll be 2+2. It can do a whole lot of different types of transmission for you, and everything is built with the total cost of ownership built in. Ted talked about, as you look at your network, you need to look at the total cost that you're going to get. Double core radio is going to give you, it's going to be lower in power, space. When Jeff talks about the rent on the tower, the smaller the radio, the less your cost is going to be able to put a radio up on the tower should you choose to do that. Everything about the 820 is built with lower total cost of ownership built in. Our unlicensed radio, the PTP-650, used a lot by telcos for DSLAM backhaul in a place that you want to extend your DSLAM out to be able to reach these speeds closer to your customers. The 820 or the 650 is a great product for that. It's a near and non-line of sight type radio, so you can put it on a 60-foot power pole and do point to point to reach your remote customers. It'll provide up to 450 meg in 4.9 through 6 gig frequencies, 10 bits per hertz spectral efficiency, which is really cool. We set a world record with that. At one point, we shot right over top of the Denver area at 124 miles not too long ago, and once again, very, very low latency. The latency number that you have to meet in any CAF funds is absolutely critical, so it's important to take a look at what the latency numbers are of the products that you would utilize. Just a show of a DSLAM backhaul type application should you choose to use DSLAMs. Our point-to-multipoint, we actually offer 2 different types of products with those. Our EPMP, that's a lower cost point-to-multipoint product. It has many of the features of our flagship PMP 450 product. It'll deliver 100 meg, actually a little bit greater than 100 meg per sector. It only comes in 2.4 and 5 gigahertz options. The PMP 450 that we'll talk about, it'll deliver 2.4, 3.5, 3.65, 5 gig frequencies in that. It also supports 900 megahertz. So, and then 900 megahertz is absolutely critical for those areas that have been tough to reach through any wireless, like behind trees or you know, anything like that. A 900 megahertz will burn right through a tree. So tree-covered areas that a lot of carriers have been really leery of are now accessible with the 900 megahertz system. We recently introduced what we call our PMP 450M, or our Medusa product. The Medusa product will support up to 450 meg per sector. It's a massive new MIMO system that utilizes beam steering to be able to get multiple customers, much more density than we had with our PMP 450 product. The 450, this says 125. That's the existing product. They'll support now either 125 or 450 meg, depending on what you want to use. Over a gig worth of tower bandwidth available. It'll support symmetrical or asymmetrical speed. For the CAF reverse auction, asymmetrical is probably what you're looking for. It also has to minimize interference, which is absolutely critical in building a wireless network. It has a GPS syncing capability, which means we won't have self-interference, nor possibly will we interfere with anybody else around us, or we will minimize the interference that they could cause. And the low latency that we have with the product, 5 to 8 milliseconds, will easily support VoIP or video if you want to offer triple play services in your network that you win for CAF. The 450 looks kind of like this. Once again, it's available at 900 megahertz, multiple frequencies. That's another thing you need to look at. Ted talked about figuring out what kind of spectrum that you're going to be able to offer in your areas. We offer multiple frequency options for the 450 platform. It's the typical point-to-multipoint type application where you have an access point set on a tower somewhere. The subscriber module would connect to your customer's home, and then we also have what we call a CN Pilot, which is our ATA that can provide VoIP services inside the house that will allow you to troubleshoot all the way into the home to see what's going on. And this is the 900 megahertz product. Once again, very, very powerful product for areas that were not reachable before, even utilizing our PMP 450 and the 5 gig or 2.4 gig radio. The 900 megahertz system is not afraid of trees. It will go right through that. So for those really, really hard to reach systems, if you want to do a census block but say this looks harder to reach and I may not be able to do that, give the 900 megahertz system a try. I think you'll be pleased with that. The EPAP, like I said, this is our lower cost product. It's an 802.11n system. It has a lot of the features of the PNP 450 as well, including the GPS syncing at a much lower cost. Once again, our goal in helping you create a CAF reverse auction bid is being able to meet the technical requirements at different cost profiles that you would need to be able to win. So the PNP 450 could be a choice. The PNP or the ePNP could be a choice. You can choose there. And once again, I'm speaking fast because I want to be respectful of your time. It operates in the 5 gig, the 2.4 gig on a 40 megahertz channel. You can get 200 meg out of this. Very nice, powerful, lower cost radio. We've seen a lot of success with it. We've got customers using both our 450 and our ePNP that have won rural broadband experiment grants in the past. We have planning tools for you. We have a product called Link Planner that's free to download. If you think you want to use wireless, you can download Link Planner, set up the nodes that you want to reach, and all you have to do is put in the location of the AP and the remote modules or the microwave backhaul links, tell it what height you're going to get, and Link Planner will utilize Google Earth to come back and tell you exactly what kind of performance that you're going to get. So as you analyze the census blocks that you're going after, you can utilize these free tools that we have to figure out whether an area that you want to serve is reachable via wireless or not reachable via wireless. It does Link Planner does the ePNP, it does PNP 450, and of course it does all of our point-to-multipoint products that will allow you to really engineer your area from your desktop. We also have tools that we can provide. If you want to take a look at an area to see if you can provide it, we will come and help you with that. We'll engineer the area for you, and then we'll actually build a return on investment model for you as well. We'll show you what your costs are going to be. We have this box that allow you to put your own costs in so you can customize it exactly for you. It's not a vendor provided. This is what we think it's going to cost for you. You can put your numbers in there as well. So here we're running real close to time. We want to thank you again, everybody, for getting in. We hope you found this webinar educational. We're going to do it again in a month. If you want to sit in on that, that would be great. But we wanted to show you some options available as you look to being able to create your bid. So for the presenters today, if you need some help in designing your bid for the reverse auction, Ted can help you with that. That's what his company does. If you're unclear about vertical assets or you don't own any vertical assets in your own area but you want to be able to bid, Jeffrey can help you with the vertical assets. And of course, we have the equipment that we believe and we've seen in the past has helped bidders win awards from the FCC for things like the CAF reverse auction. So I want to thank you for your time. Any questions, you can submit them. We will absolutely answer them and get back to you, and anything else that we can do for you, we'll be happy to do that. So we got 30 seconds left. Are there any immediate questions before we end the webinar?
Yeah, real quick, this is Jeff. I got quite a few emails about my deck wasn't visible, so I didn't know if you were going to share the deck or send it out to all the participants.
Yeah, I can absolutely do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, once again, thank you very much. We know your time's valuable and you spending it with us. We're very appreciative of that. So thank you for attending and have a great day.